What was your biggest okay, I need to see a doctor moment? Was traveling for work and my eye had been hurting for a day or two. Felt like something was stuck in there and wouldn't come out, but I couldn't see anything in it, nor could anyone else. Then I started to notice colors were a little less vibrant. The next morning when I woke up I couldn't see a goddamn thing from my left eye. Scared the crap out of me. Went to the doctor, got an eye exam, MRI, a bunch of blood work done and found out I have multiple sclerosis. Yep, frick multiple sclerosis. Oh my god. I am so sorry. I was super thirsty all the time. I also had to pee every 5 minutes. I mysteriously lost about 20 pounds and couldn't gain muscle from eating more and working out. I also slept all the time and fell asleep usually after eating. I was drinking a ton of pop and craved ice cream and still hungry after eating a whole carton. I always felt like crap and didn't know why. My dad made me test my blood sugar and it was well over 600. I had been walking around with undiagnosed type 1 diabetes for a few years. My pancreas was still producing enough insulin to keep me from ending up in the hospital, but if I hadn't started treatment I could have died. Oh man. Second I read super thirsty I knew. Crap sucks man. Pumpers unite. When I lost the ability to walk and lost half of my eyesight, turned out I have a severe case of migraine attacks. My eyes do that when I get migraines. Scary crap. I've never lost the ability to walk though, it's just general clumsiness and lack of coordination. My friends are usually the first to notice. My fingers have gone numb before though. It's dumb because I'm a med student, but I ignored the pain I was having in my right lower abdomen because it was finals week. It came on and off. The clinic gave me pain meds and I went back to take my finals. My last exam the pain was so intense like my insides were shredding that I just bubbled in random answers and went to the ER after I turned my exam in. Turns out I was passing a kidney stone. 29th day of my period. Saw a doctor who gave pills that made the bleeding stop for a few days then bled some more. Good god. For me 19 days was the last straw. Frick uteri. When I was bleeding out my butt 8 times a day and falling over due to abdomen pain. It took me about 2 months of this before actually going to the hospital, which I worked at as a security guard. Turns out I had pancreatitis and ulcerative colitis. Got the pancreatitis 3 times that year. Idiopathic of course. I had what I thought was horrid bloody diarrhea, but shortly after I realized it wasn't blood, it was all the red velvet cake I had eaten. My friend called her mom in tears, saying there was something wrong with her because she was crapping blood and not on her period. Beats, not even once. I got thrown through a table drunk. I couldn't go to the doctor drunk since I was active duty military. I went home and slept. I woke up unable to move my shoulders. I dislocated an arm and separated a shoulder. I waited until after the Packers-Bears game and got driven to the hospital. That is the most Midwest story I've heard in a while. I woke up with a headache one day. Felt just like any other headache, so I just popped an Advil. It helped a little bit, not much. The next night I got a fever, so I just assumed I was catching a cold flu, so I took some cold meds to relieve the fever. My headache got worse with each passing day and it was not going away, so after the 4th day with the same headache, which got to the point where I couldn't open my eyes and the light, I finally went to the ER. Turns out I had meningitis. 4 days. I'm reliving the ticking clock's hours from when we had an epidemic, the late 90s, early zeros. They still show that SARS from time to time too, even after a vaccine program. I spent years checking every mark on my skin with a glass tumbler. I woke up on the 1st of March, or St. David's Day where I live, in Wales, about 7 years ago with the most horrific pain in my left bollock. I could barely walk. My mum took me to the doctor and I had an operation the same day. Apparently I had twisted my nut tubes in the night. These days I just have a scar on my left ball. This is my most feared thing ever. When I was in 7th grade we went to the movies on a Saturday night. I ate a crap ton of popcorn. We went home and I spent the night throwing my guts up. When I woke up the next morning to go to church with my parents, I told them about the throwing up and they told me I had eaten too much popcorn. Not even 5 minutes later, I had an incredible pain on my right side. It was the worst feeling I'd ever felt ever. I cried and cried. But my parents didn't believe me. They thought I just didn't want to go to church. They finally gave in and took me to the doctors. Come to find out I had appendicitis. The doctor said that if I had waited another hour or so my appendix would have ruptured and I would probably be dead. To this day 10 years later I still tell my parents, and you thought I was faking. Before I even finished reading it I knew what you had. No appendices unite. I found lumps in my breast. They turned out to be cysts and nothing to worry about. I found a lump too. Turned out to be stage II breast cancer. Most women find the tumors themselves and 80% are benign. But I wasn't as lucky. 1 year cancer free this week. In college, I was having sharp pains with every breath for about 3 days. Went to her and it turned out after a million tests I had an infection in the tissue of my ribcage. I was given morphine, hung out for several hours and was sent home with a script for painkillers and antibiotics. I had a sudden bad stomachache right below my ribs and 12 hours after starting I realized that the punt of pain I was in was reaching the point if unbearable. I was debating taking a nap to see if that would help, but decided to get help and not be stupid instead. I called an ambulance for myself and waited downstairs outside for the EMTs. I can't remember things super clearly after that, but it turned out my appendix was severely inflamed. I went to the hospital, and while waiting for surgery it actually burst. I literally went from hanging out and having fun the night before to near death in the span of 18 hours. No pain on the lower right hand side until it burst. I developed sepsis and had to stay in the hospital for a while with a tube leaking goo from the surgical site stuck in there for good measure. Waiting for surgery was the worst physical pain I've ever experienced in my life, including childbirth. This happened to me, too. It was honestly the worst pain of my entire life. I wanted to die. I was little and had an ear infection. I didn't want to tell my parents because I knew it was expensive to go to the doctor. After 4 months or so, my grandmother noticed I wasn't paying attention to her and I explained I couldn't hear out of that ear anymore. I told her about the infection and the reasoning. My mom took me to the doctor and a few weeks later, I had a tube put in. Now, I only have 60% of my hearing in that ear and cannot hear certain sound pitches at all. The eardrum was severely damaged. I realized a few months ago that I had partly lost sensation in a spot on my lower right leg. Didn't seem like a big deal, so I just waited for it to come back. Instead, the numbness grew until it was all of my lower right leg. After a few months, I finally mentioned it to my boyfriend who got really freaked out and wanted me to go to the doctor. I spent a long, sleepless night wondering what it could be. Doctor first thing in the morning. Turns out to be, no one knows. They thought a nerve issue at first, but nope. Blood is still circulating well. Lab tests came back fine. I still can't feel my freaking leg. I know that this isn't a funny situation, but all I can imagine because of your last sentence is you going to stand up every morning out of bed and falling over and just cursing at your leg. One day I got a toothache. I thought it was a normal toothache, except it didn't let up at all like they usually do and only got worse as the day wore on. I also broke out all over my forehead with these weird cyst-like bumps. By the next day, the toothache had spread to 4 of my back teeth and jaw. I was in agony, and it was non-stop pain that never ebbed, just kept getting stronger and stronger with each passing hour. I went to the ER and learned that I had shingles. I could have gone blind in my left eye, too, because the shingles were spreading to my optic nerve by the time I went to the ER. I feel your pain. I lost a bit of hearing because of shingles. I was snow skiing with my dad. I fell and my ski didn't release. For those that don't know, your skis release on purpose to prevent injury. The added weight allowed the ski to helicopter around a full 360 plus degrees. It hurt a lot, but my dad thought I was okay. He told me just walk up the hill to the lodge and rest it for a few minutes. I took off my ski, went to stand up and my leg went right angle sideways. I was looking at my foot which was sitting at about 10 o'clock with my knee in the snow. At that moment we realized a hospital was a good idea. It turns out the over-rotation ripped every ligament in my knee. I had to have surgery and wear a splint for a year. I was told if I hadn't been so young, 12, I probably would never have walked again without a cane. I'm 25 now and I can still feel the difference. Heck yes, I tore my ACL and they used my hamstring to replace it and I can feel it missing in my leg. My left knee will never be the same. I was cooking something, and hot oil from the pan splashed up and got all over my hand. I covered it up as best I could, finished my shift and went home. Later that night my dad, who is an EMT with 30 years of experience, told me that I needed to see a doctor. I thought that if he tells me it is serious, then it must be serious. The doc told me that if I hadn't got it checked out, I could have had permanent nerve and tissue damage on my hand. All over my hand. Either you have a really small hand or you cook with a heck of a lot of oil. I quit sleeping because I didn't feel tired, and spent the nights looking for the poison my BF was putting in my food when I stayed over, amongst other odd things. I attacked my brother with a phone Naomi Campbell style, and got kicked out of the family home. Luckily my BF knew something was up and took me in, and I got treated for bipolar. I don't even identify with the person that was, but I certainly don't shirk any responsibility for my actions. I'm now in treatment, am more informed and trying to make amends. I had a wisdom tooth coming in and was having severe difficulty breathing. I was septic as heck. I ended up giving myself a knife because I couldn't keep anything down. I slept for 20 hours a day. I barely sleep 7 normally. I didn't have money for a doctor visit. Called a friend and he paid for it. I really should have been in the air. That's an American story if I ever heard one. I once fell over in pain while peeing. Knowing that that's a symptom of most STDs, I went to the doc right away. I had hooked up with an ex-GF a week or so prior, so it seemed to fit. All tests came back negative and it went away by the end of the next day. Blood in semen. Quite unnerving. I have a crazy skin picking habit. I've always had open wounds all over my feet for as long as I can remember. I'm used to having blood everywhere surrounding my feet, so nothing really phases me regarding sore feet. One night my foot got pretty bad. I started to feel dizzy and sick but didn't think anything of it. I woke up the next day and my foot was huge and swollen and red. It was actually inflamed to be twice the size of the other foot. I started freaking out and got up to go to the doctor, but when I put weight on it I passed out. I eventually woke up and barely made it to the doctor. Ended up having a huge infection that got into my blood. Since then I put on fake nails and my habit is gone for the first time in my life. No more gross infected feet for me. Yikes, I'm glad you're better. I hit a tree snowboarding going pretty fast. After falling and bouncing about 4 feet up off an unexpected catwalk, I wrapped my torso around an adult aspen tree. Being young AMD invincible, I thought I was okay, until I collapsed on my porch on the way home, and asked my roommate to take me to the hospital. After way too many attempts to insert an IV, several scans to check if my orgasms were intact, I spent an uncomfortable night in the hospital with 2 corked off IVs in my elbows and an ice only. Went home in the morning with 2 broken ribs, wondering what the point of the hospital visit was, being young and not interested in peace of mind. When I counted 2 years from my last period, still don't know what's going on. When I had a crushing pain in my left chest, I had difficulty breathing and I was hearing strange noises coming from my chest. I asked for an ambulance. I thought I was dying. When I realized that the amount of self-hate I had, along with extreme suicidal tendencies, wasn't normal and I needed to talk to someone about it. Broke my leg but I didn't feel it. Several days later I noticed it has become harder to walk. Didn't pay attention. After a few more days it was really painful and so I went then. Doctors were like, WTF, how didn't you notice? The hard white skin on my foot that has been there for 2 months and hasn't peeled was actually my bone. Found out in a massage parlor. Not so happy ending. Background: the first day I saw the hard white skin was after playing a game of football. We were playing outside our local stadium because there was no field open. 3 AM. And that place was lit up, not very well, and had 2 goals. Now, the stadium was decorated with stone spheres painted to look like footballs. So the ball was far out of the area we were playing. I went to get the ball, half found it, kicked it. Son of a mother sucker, it hurt. No problem, I'll walk it off. So I did, and the part that hurt me was numb so I could continue playing. No problem. 2 months later, at the massage parlor, when the masseurs reached my left foot, It was okay. I actually had hard white skin on the same spot on this foot, but she freaked the frick out when she came to my other foot. I told her it hard skin like the other foot. She told me that she knew her crap, she knows anatomy, and that crap is bone. I'm going to explain everything in layman's terms. I don't really know how to put it in medical terms. Sorry. Talia, I was overwhelmed at this point. There was a bone peeking out for 2 freaking months exposed to so much freaking crap. My friend did the talking to the doctor while I was asleep. 3 scans and uncomfortable caresses and unusual spots later the doctor told me that I have the worst combination ever. Big bones in my feet and tender skin. Even if I didn't perform surgery, there's a great chance of this thing reoccurring. So I have to pay double the money, perform 2 surgeries. One to permanently fix the bone, the second to permanently stabilize my skin. All is fixed. I have my health, and my money is growing back, and I have to stay on a special diet for my skin to be fabulous and strong. I have to stay on it for 6 months on a daily basis, then once a week, but I'm still on it. That's about it. Blood in my urine. Not just a little, enough to make it opaque and bright red. Turned out I had bladder cancer and the tumor was bleeding. 7 surgeries and 3 rounds of chemo later, I've been cancer free for 7 years. I had a mini stroke. I had recently moved from America to Poland, and one day at a family dinner my left arm went numb and I had traces in my vision. At first I thought it was a heart attack, but everyone told me it was okay. It happened again one day and resulted in a nasty headache, so I went to the doctor, told him my symptoms. He told me I may have MS and I needed MRIs, CAT scans, etc. So I went around Poland getting tested and losing faith in their system. Someone took me to a quack doctor who listened to my lifestyle, looked into my eyes and told me my eyes say I have a great personality. I don't respect the quack doctor much, but what he did do is listen. And if any other doctor would have heard about my diet of 4 cups of coffee and a bottle of absinthe the night, they would have all known the cause. Magnesium deficiency. Took MG pills and all the problems went away. For about 2 years I had gallstone pain, but my GP told me that I was experiencing panic attacks. The attacks got worse, and one day I got home from work and projectile vomited everywhere. My mum was furious. The pain was so bad, my stomach had swelled and I was moaning in pain. Suddenly I was sick again, and it was like The Exorcist. Green and black bile everywhere. I remember going to my mum, please take me to the doctor. Pancreatitis, liver infection and gallbladder infection. A weak and IQ and gastric problems 5 years on. Freaking GPs. It was when I stopped eating and lost half a stone. For somebody small like me, it was a noticeable difference. There was a whole bunch of things that came before that, but it was seeing myself become a skeleton that kicked me in the ass. People, if you suspect you might have depression, please see your doctor. Went to the optician, mentioned I saw flashing lights every now and then. He looked in the back of my eye and thought he saw something. He brought his colleague over, who couldn't see anything. They wondered if it was the machine. Regardless, they called the hospital consultant, who says, come in now, I'll see you immediately. It's a Saturday, so you can understand my panic at their urgency. But he sees nothing. I get sent home. Well, it's 1 week later, I'm back up at uni, and the flashes have increased. Not only that, but I'm waking up feeling sick every morning and my eyes are aching like frick. Soon, I'm seeing ink blots in the corners of both eyes, so I call the hospital. They say they can see me that afternoon. I explain I'm back up at uni, 200 miles away. Fine, go to a walk-in center. Not accident and emergency, I ask. Nah, I go to the walk-in center. They ask me what the frick I'm doing there, as they have nothing that can see into the back of my eye. I'm sent immediately to accident and emergency, where they find a tear in both of my retinas. I was very close to going blind. Funny thing was, I was reluctant to bother going again. I figured it would clear up on its own. It was my GF who prodded me into going. Glad she did. Also strangely, this is most common in those over 60s. Even then it's smething like a 1 in 10k chance. I'm 25, super short-sighted, but 25. If you are very short-sighted, that must have been why. Having an eye shape so abnormal can stretch the retinas, and that makes them far more prone to tearing and other issues like glaucoma. Source: I'm short-sighted. Went to an optometrist with decades of experience. When I looked down and saw my right foot was pointing behind me, that was my thought before I screamed. When I was unable to sleep due to pain, and suddenly I wasn't able to function at home or school due to the pain in my neck. Well, turns out I had shingles. My dad took me to the ER, while my mom wanted to make me wait a week to go see my doctor. Yet, no, there was no way I was going to be able to wait that long. I was on the strongest Vicodin they can give you at the age of 13 and basically spent the entirety of a month sleeping. I wish I went sooner instead of ignoring it all. When my parents left me at home with a viral infection telling me I had no moral fiber cause I didn't go to school that day, then came the severe asthma attack. I can look back and laugh now, but it was pretty dang scary. I had an appendectomy last year after months of waking up at 2 AM throwing up, having diarrhea constantly and having stomach pain. I'm not a fan of going to the doctor and I just told myself it was because I was eating poorly. However, even if I would eat healthy or not eat, it would still happen and the pain only got worse. By the time I finally went to the doctor, they told me if I waited a few more days to come in, my appendix was extremely likely to burst. It turned out fine. I was still on my father's military health insurance, so it cost me a copay of like $20 and a couple days later I felt perfectly fine. Playing football senior year of high school, catch a touchdown pass and get tackled in the end zone. I stand up to celebrate and notice that my left arm now has a bend in between my wrist and elbow. I walked straight to the ambulance that was parked next to the field and sat down on the gurney without even talking to anyone. I guess all of the adrenaline and everything kept me from feeling that I had completely snapped my forearm. I was in the computer all day, then my family went out to dinner, leaving me all alone at home. I then get a sharp pain in my right shoulder, then no feeling in my right arm, nor I can move it. I thought it was asleep, so I went to bed. After I couldn't sleep, I called my mom to take time to the hospital, but she didn't get home close to midnight. By then it was 4 hours since I had the numbness. I get downstairs as best as I could. The stairs railing was on the right side, and I just used my left arm to lower myself down each step. At the hospital, I found out I had a stroke and stayed in the hospital for close to 2 weeks to recover. TLDR, strokes aren't fun. While out at dinner with friends, I stopped to use the restroom on the way out, which is when I noticed half a golf ball sticking out of my abdomen. Turns out I had a hernia. This being Friday night and not wanting to go to the I live in the US, so didn't feel like losing my life savings. I laid around on the couch until Monday morning. I called the hospital to ask how to reduce the swelling and what to look for in terms of get your butt in here now. Had surgery Wednesday and spent the next 3-4 months recovering because the swelling had gotten that bad prior to the surgery and took forever to go down. When a ton of flies would constantly follow me sitting on top of the bandage of the stinking 1-inch hole in my leg's flesh. I had perforated my leg with a drainage pipe a week before. Turned out good. Still a big scar. Had a fever of 104.3 Fahrenheit for days before I went in. Turned out to be viral meningitis plus pneumonia. Randomly brushed my hand across my breast and felt a golf ball sized lump. I came back home from a night out for a friend's birthday and found my left nut completely firm, like a rubber ball. Went to the doctor the next day and after 2 weeks of specialists and a surgery, found out it was testicular cancer. This is the goodest fly boy. He will bring you 10 years of happiness in exchange for a like on this video. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.